Honestly, every time I drink, I tend to regret it.
So it's fun to a certain point, and then it's not fun.
Today's episode on Spot On is entitled I'll Have Another, the good, the bad, and the ugly about consuming alcohol. This is Spot On, a health and wellness podcast for college students, soon to be college students, or anyone that knows a college student. Spot On breaks through the latest health and wellness information hijacked from media headlines to provide you with accurate and usable information that is, well, spot on to meet your needs. I am your host, Dr. Joan Salge Blake. I am a nutrition professor at Boston University and the author of the college textbook called Nutrition in You, which is used in colleges across the United States and abroad. We know that in the latest dietary guidelines that they suggest that if you choose to drink alcohol, you should do it moderately, and that's defined as having a glass of 5 ounces of wine, 12 ounces of beer, or 1.5 ounces with a shot of hard liquor. But I'm not so sure that a lot of people know how much is moderate. Let's go to the streets and ask them if they've ever had a situation where they've consumed alcohol to the point, well, it was just ugly.
Yes, I regretted drinking alcohol because I acted really dumb.
I always regret drinking alcohol. There's no why. I just do.
So I actually have regretted drinking alcohol many times in my life.
There have been a few times I've regretted drinking, but normally I am pretty adequate about sobering up.
You can get out of hand with it really quickly and then not realize how you're impacting, your ability to make good decisions and your ability to be like a functioning person the next day.
So it's fun to a certain point, and then it's not fun.
We went and we bathed in the Széchenyi baths in Budapest. Not only did I momentarily lose my Speedo within the baths, I put my head underneath the water, which is not what you're not supposed to do, because I ended up getting pink eye.
No, I've never regretted drinking too much alcohol. I've regretted things that I've done after drinking, but I haven't regretted how much I've had.
I guess the only time I regret is because I had a meeting the next morning and I was I should have just not, and also the headache I got for the rest of the day. I was just really tired.
Well, I guess what we just heard from those on the street is we need a little bit of Alcohol 101 to figure out how the body uses alcohol, what it does to your body and your brain, and then let's dive into a little deeper what is the good, the bad, and what is the ugly about drinking too much alcohol. You know, I've wanted to do this spot-on segment about alcohol from the beginning, and I realize that the legal drinking age in the United States is 21, and that many college students are not even 21 as yet. But I think it's very, very important for people to understand alcohol, how it all is metabolized in the body. And I wanted to do this because I read this statistic from the National Institute of Health, and it said about 1 in 4 college students report academic consequences from drinking, including missing classes, falling behind in class, doing poorly on exams or papers, and receiving lower grades overall because of alcohol consumption. So to me, we have to address this, and let's talk about this and see what the heck is going on through this whole thing. So how we're going to do this is just what you got from the name of the episode here. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and then the ugly about consuming alcohol. I'm so excited today to have on Spot On a registered dietitian, Ginger Hultin. She has a master's degree, and of course she's a registered dietitian nutritionist. She's also a media spokesperson for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and she has a private practice, a concierge nutrition practice with the name of, are you ready for this? Champagne Nutrition. Okay, do you understand why I have her on the show? Now you understand. Okay, Ginger, welcome to Spot On.
Thank you for having me.
I just need the backstory. Give me the short backstory. How the heck did you get a specialty in nutrition and then alcohol consumption? I just think this is fascinating.
Yeah, it's quite a little niche. Actually, when I was doing all my many years of schooling for becoming a registered dietitian, I was working in restaurants and I was bartending all night and all weekend. Yeah, so I started to really learn about alcohol in general and cocktails and wine, as well as people's relationship to alcohol and food and the good, the bad, and the ugly, exactly what you're saying. It can be so wonderful, but it can also have some challenges too.
You know, I love the way you just said that, your relationship with food and alcohol, because that's really, really interesting. And we're going to walk through that, because there is a relationship between the two, and especially outside the United States, in European, there's a fabulous relationship with it. So I'm sure we're going to get into that. So tell me, this half an ounce of alcohol, no matter whether you get it in the hard liquor or the wine or the beer, how does your body absorb it and metabolize it?
This part is really interesting because alcohol is different than any other substance that we consume. Alcohol actually can diffuse straight through your stomach lining. Did you know that?
Wow. Because I know that the majority of the nutrients that your body absorbs take place in the small intestine, which is right after the stomach. And really, so you're saying it's the only one that can be partially absorbed right through the stomach?
Exactly. So that's why sometimes, especially on an empty stomach, it hits you so fast. So about 20% of the alcohol you drink goes straight through your stomach, straight to the liver. So you are actually feeling the effects of alcohol pretty immediately. And the rest, the 80%, will go through the small intestine, just like our other food, where it gets absorbed and transported that way.
Okay, yeah. So then this makes all the sense in the world. You always hear it's like, don't drink on an empty stomach. Don't drink on an empty stomach. This makes sense now, because from a physiological standpoint, if it's on an empty stomach and there's not any food in there, then that baby's just going to be quickly absorbed.
It really does. And drinking on an empty stomach can be very dangerous for that reason, because it will be going to your liver more quickly than the liver can break it down and excrete it. So you will be having a higher level of alcohol in your blood floating around the system.
Oh, wow. So you're going to have a higher blood alcohol concentration? Is that that's what I read about?
Exactly. BAC. Exactly.
Right. Okay. So the first take-home message is you want to not have that rush and not tax your liver. So having food with it when you drink, or that's why, that's why the smart Europeans have their wine or whatever with a meal. Hello, and we'll talk something about that. But it doesn't make sense to have it on an empty stomach, so making sure that you've eaten something. Okay, so now you have a drink. Okay, so we said 20% of the alcohol is absorbed right through the stomach, and the rest is going to be absorbed in the small intestine. So now we absorbed it all. Now what happens?
So now the liver actually has to do the heavy lifting. So the liver has to deal with alcohol, which is actually toxic to the body. It's very irritating to the body. It's not necessarily a healthy thing for us. So the liver says, okay, I need to activate these enzymes. They have long names like aldehyde dehydrogenase, for example, breaks it down to something that's not toxic, and then it gets excreted through the urine, things like that. So the liver is working very, very hard, but there's a series of pathways that are driven by enzymes. It's all about metabolism. It's very complicated, but it depends on the individual person how quickly you can get rid of that toxin.
That's so interesting, because you hear about sometimes the health benefits that we'll get to in a minute. But you're saying, to break it down, it's really like a toxin, and your liver's got to say, whoa, okay, let me get this out of here. So how many alcoholic drinks can your liver, metabolize in an hour?
Yeah, this is another really interesting point, and it does get complicated. Very generally, it takes about an hour for your body to break down about 8 grams of alcohol. So if a drink is about 14 grams, you're looking about clearing about a half of a drink per hour. So it's a pretty slow process. It sticks around. But I want to tell you that this depends on many things. Male versus female, your age, your weight, your genes, like I mentioned, how quickly those pathways are working in the liver, how much you've eaten, like we talked about, the type of alcohol you're drinking, how strong it is, how quickly you drink. And then people should not underestimate that there's many interactions with medication.
Oh, yes.
So really people need to think about that too. There's many factors. Some people are going to clear alcohol faster and some slower, but generally about a half a drink an hour.
Wow. You know, that's interesting you said about medication because, you know, we're talking not just medications that the pharmacist gives you. This could be over-the-counter medications like, you know, hay fever medication or, you know, if you have a cold or a flu or something, well, you wouldn't be drinking then. But so really you got to be very careful to read if you're taking any medication.
It's true. I mean, some antibiotics have interactions, so it's really important to understand what medications you're on, even if they seem common, and even if they're supplements, because the liver actually is processing all of these compounds, and so the liver is doing a lot of work for us.
You know, so the whole drink gets to the liver. It's pulled up to the liver. The liver says, "Well, I can only do half of you." So does the other half keep going out in the blood? What happens to the other half?
Yeah, so you are getting a higher and higher blood alcohol level as you're drinking because that's how it's being transported around the body as it's getting absorbed through the small intestine. So that's why people will get drunker and feel the effects more and more strongly as it builds up because you're getting a higher blood alcohol concentration. The liver is not processing it. That's also, it is a toxin. So that's when people might have really negative effects like passing out or throwing up or forgetting things. So it can become pretty severe at high levels.
I guess I can imagine. I'm trying to visualize this in my head because I got this like liver visual of my liver in my head here, and I'm trying to, you know, do an analogy here, and it's almost like you're driving a car in a busy city and you're trying to get a parking space on the street and there isn't one available, so you just keep on circling the block to find a space open up. And eventually maybe a space will open up in the case of the liver and the drink. So an hour later, you know, there might be a space for another drink to enter the liver to be metabolized. But in the meantime, if there's not a space available, that alcohol is going to be driving around the block, in this case, your body, and wait to get into the liver to be metabolized. Is that sort of what I got in my head there?
I think that's a great way to put it. But, you know, maybe the whole time that you're driving around the city looking for parking, there's like worse and worse traffic and it's like raining and you're in a really bad mood because you're not feeling well and you're really hungry. So it's like this irritated state. Like the body isn't meant to handle high amounts of alcohol floating around. It's not good for a variety of organs. And we'll talk about that later on. But yeah, it's an irritated state.
Have you ever tried to get a parking space in New York City? Okay, that's the ugly visual I have in my head about that.
So bad.
That is okay. So tell me, you said something very interesting. So why are women more susceptible to the effects of alcohol than males? Why is that? Is that because they are bigger?
So that is the traditional thinking, and you will hear people talking about that. And generally, females are smaller statured than males, but that's a huge generalization, and we know that that's not always true. That being said, males that are of a smaller stature should be aware that smaller statured people and people of a slighter weight actually do risk having higher effects of alcohol in their system. So you should think about your body size and stature.
Is it so what is the difference? Is because I'm a female and do I have less water in my body, or tell me what is it that's causing the difference?
Yeah, that's part of it too. So it does have to do with stature. Women do have less water on average in their bodies than men, so they're going to get the higher blood alcohol levels faster.
Okay.
The most important thing, though, actually, is that women have less of that enzyme that I mentioned, alcohol dehydrogenase, which helps the liver metabolize the alcohol. Like that's the parking spot, right?
Oh, so they have less of the enzyme, so they're not able to metabolize the alcohol as efficiently as males?
That's exactly right. And this research actually is pretty new. It wasn't even discovered that that was the case until the 1990s, but that is part of the reason. So women, because of that, actually are at increased risk for developing damage to their liver, to their heart, and to their brain when they're having long-term alcohol misuse or chronic alcoholism.
Are you having trouble sleeping, focusing, or relaxing? If the answer is yes, then the TM Softs White Noise Sleep Sounds podcast has got you covered. This hour-long podcast is made to help you get rid of distractions, reduce stress, relax, and most importantly, get better sleep. You can listen to sounds of nature, white noise, relaxing music, and much, much more. You can check out the TM Softs White Noise Sleep Sounds podcast on Spotify or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, let me tell you, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Trust me, if I can do it on Anchor, anybody can do it on Anchor. Besides being easy, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit the podcast right from either your phone or your computer. And best of all, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you. And you can hear it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and many, many other platforms. So it is really like one-stop shopping, everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So really, if you're into this and you want to do this, Anchor is the place to go. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I had read this, that alcohol is a depressant. And that's interesting because when you think of alcohol, you think like, oh, you're at a party and you feel good. But it's really a depressant, isn't it?
It is. I think that that's an interesting point. It lowers inhibitions for sure, and it creates this kind of fun, celebratory party attitude, partially because of what it's doing in the body and partially, I think, because of our celebratory culture around alcohol. But the reason that it's blunting some of the brain activity, so it is a depressant, and it's important to think about how that could be affecting you.
So interesting. So we often hear that, you look at the dietary guidelines, it says that for those adults aged 21 and over who choose to drink, so it's not like this is not like, gee, you should get, you have to have an alcoholic drink, because you do not. So if you choose to drink moderately. And can you explain what moderate drinking is?
Yeah, the guidelines are very clear. The dietary guidelines 2015 to 2020 say if you drink at all, and you don't have to, and you shouldn't start if you don't, we're talking the limit of 1 drink a day for women and 2 drinks a day for men.
And that's based on science. And is that based on, going above that because there could be problems? Or what's that based on?
Yeah, so there is so much research, actually, huge studies about the effects of alcohol on people over time. So really this is looking at the health outcomes. And there is some interesting research says that a little bit of alcohol could be helpful, but more than these recommendations could be harmful. And there's also some really interesting language in these guidelines and a couple others about how you shouldn't drink. Let's say you wanted to be like, oh, I have 2 drinks a day for the whole week. I'm just going to drink 6 on one night, but none the other night. So that's not the intention at all. And the World Health Organization actually says you should take 2 non-drinking days a week.
I actually like that because, when I teach a nutrition class here and we talk about this, and I often talk about the guidelines of, no more than up to 1 drink a day for women and no more up to 2 for men. I always look to the students, the ones that are 21 in the class, and say, look, there's no banking. You can't bank it for all Friday night. So don't get me that. I can see them in their head. They're adding up, how much they can do on Saturday and Sunday. I'm like, there's no banking, so don't even start with me. So let's get into then the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start with the good. So what are some health benefits of this moderate drinking that you've identified?
Yeah, there are some really interesting studies out there. The first people to really catch on to the potential health benefits as far as actual studies was not that long ago either. The French paradox. Have you heard of that?
Yes, of course, yes.
It was actually first mentioned in 1992. It was in a study on a population in southern France. France has a very high life expectancy. They do drink 2 to 3 glasses of wine a day, but they also eat a lot of bread and cheese and rich desserts. So they started to see some benefits with longevity and healthy heart outcomes. The Framingham Heart Study also saw that too, specifically with heart disease. So there is probably a link between light alcohol intake and longevity, heart health, and even some interesting research on diabetes, type 2 diabetes.
But you know what the interesting you just said? Here we go, we're going to Europe. But what they're saying is when you have it with a meal. This is there, and that's the difference between Europeans, the way they drink alcohol and the way we do. They have it with a meal. They don't go out like for a drink after work with your friends. Or they drink it with a meal. So I think there's a lot to be said of how it's consumed and what it's consumed with.
There probably are many confounding factors because the French paradox is a little bit controversial and it's not completely proven. But you're right, especially about French wine culture and Italian wine culture and Spanish wine culture. Really, the food and social aspect and drinking are very intertwined. You wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to meet my friend and we're going to split a bottle of wine. It would be like we're going to have dinner, like wine on the dinner table, and like have this big fun party.
Right. And some of what I had read is the good part of the alcohol, or is the how you're drinking it. In other words, what's the source? So something like red wine and dark beer have antioxidants in it, right? And that's could be beneficial.
Yeah, so there is some good research now, not just on wine, but on different spirits and on beer. And so researchers are not quite sure if it's the alcohol itself, if it's the antioxidants, because there's antioxidants in all these different drinks too. They're not sure exactly what is causing the positive effects.
Right. I have to read you a funny quote I got from the USDA about this whole, I drink red wine, and dark beer because of the antioxidants. And this person at the USDA said, people don't get addicted to fruits and vegetables and don't get into accidents for consuming too many apples. So in other words, get your antioxidants from the produce aisle and don't necessarily have to get it from the wine and beer aisle. So I thought that was really right, spot on as you want to say this. So what is drinking responsibly then?
Drinking responsibly, I think, really has to do with sticking within those guidelines and also assessing your relationship to alcohol. Are you drinking on an empty stomach for the purposes of feeling it faster? Or, do you know that you're binge drinking some nights? Are you saving up your weekly drinks to have more? Like, why are you drinking? How are you drinking? And how's it affecting your life? So the guidelines, sticking with the guidelines is a very simple answer, but I think the broader answer is, what is your relationship to alcohol like, and is it healthy?
Right. That's really, really good, and that's something we should sit back and think about. What is the reason why we are doing this? And, getting now the good, we heard some good, and now the bad is, there's some downsides of drinking. Let's go to the first one, which is they contain calories, right?
A lot of calories. If protein and carbohydrates are 4 calories per gram, alcohol is 7 calories per gram, and fat is 9 calories a gram.
Oh, so it's sandwiched alcohol, right in there, right in between those carbohydrates and protein and then the fat. That's like the cream inside the middle of stuffed Oreo. That's usually not a good place to be, but go ahead.
You're exactly right. It's really high in calories just on its own. But then you have, added cola or coconut cream or juice. So you have high-calorie mixers with a high-calorie base, and that's how it adds up.
Right. So this something like a rum and Coke, that could add up then.
For sure. It's not even among the highest calorie, but it really will add up, especially if you're having several. Some of the most highest calorie cocktails are going to be like a pina colada because it's got that coconut milk in it. A big frozen margarita's got a lot of sugar and just a lot of alcohol in it, and so it's going to be very high in calories. So those tropical sweet drinks are really going to be high in calories.
Well, how many calories in a glass of wine?
You know, it's really pretty reasonable, like 120 on average. There's going to be a range, but it's not super high.
Well, Ginger, I have to tell you something funny here. You know, my niece was getting married, and so she says to me, you know, for my shower gift, can you get me the wine glasses, you know? So I said, sure. So she gives me the Crate and Barrel, you know, registry, and I go on there, and I'm looking at these wine glasses. And I actually took a picture of it. I'm going to put it on the Spot On Facebook page. These wine glasses, depending on the size and the shape, can anywhere from holding 9.5 ounces of wine to 21 ounces, Ginger. 21 ounces in one glass. So it's
that is wild.
So if you say, I just have a glass of wine today. Well, yeah, what size of a glass are we talking here? You know, 21 ounces, because a glass of wine is like 5 ounces, right?
Yeah, that's a serving. I mean, I was at a restaurant the other night, and they had on the menu, you can have a 6-ounce glass of wine or a 9-ounce glass of wine. And I was like, wow,
right,
that is a lot.
So what they're saying is you can have a glass of wine or you can have 2 glasses of wine in one glass.
Pretty much.
That's right. Okay,
Mm.
so besides the calories, you got to worry about that. Doesn't it affect your sleep?
Yeah, a lot.
And the funny thing is, the ironic thing is, we're drinking it at night. Probably, we hope, you know, that's usually what occurs. So then you go home and you try to go to sleep. And tell us how it might affect your sleep.
Yeah, this is a big one. I mean, for any person, but especially for students, I think, that are in the middle of trying to learn and trying to get up for early classes. What happens is usually we're drinking late at night, you go to sleep, and often people will fall asleep pretty hard because alcohol is a depressant. And then as your body metabolizes it, your blood sugar really starts to shift, and you'll wake up very seriously and maybe not be able to get back to sleep at all, or have very restless or light sleep the remainder of the night. So there's very solid evidence that alcohol, especially when you overconsume, is going to really disrupt sleep.
And then, you know, you disrupt your sleep, and then you wake up the next day, and then you're a mess when you're trying to think and concentrate in the classes or take the exam or finish the paper. And that was, as I started that segment off, about how college students were complaining that it's affecting their grades and their performance. So that's interesting. So it affects your sleep. You know, a hangover is, you're talking about drinking too much. I always tell my students that a hangover is your body's way of saying to you, don't do that to me again. So what is a hangover? What's happening when they have a hangover?
Yeah, there's a couple things. The first one is that alcohol is a diuretic, and so a lot of times you're feeling the effect of dehydration. Mm-hmm. Very simply, and that's sometimes where the headache comes from, or the fatigue, and then also that toxic compound that the liver has been processing that's building up, like your body's been exposed to an actual toxin, and so that's where they think some of the nausea, some of the vomiting, and some of the aches and pains in the body actually come from. So
that makes all the sense in the world. That makes all the sense in the world. If you got a toxin building up, of course, you think you're going to feel the effects of a toxin. That's what it is. Very, very interesting. So we have the good, we did the bad. All right, Ginger, let's get to the ugly. What is binge drinking?
Yeah, binge drinking definitely has some definitions from some of our alcohol boards in the U.S., but basically it's drinking more than the guidelines on a regular basis. So it would be even having, 3 or 4 drinks at a given time. And also they talk about the relationship to alcohol, why you're doing it. So there is a correlation between mental health issues and drinking alcohol. So if you are drinking to calm anxiety, or if you're drinking out of depression, things like that, that's a sign that you can be having a problem, or that you might be binge drinking. And then also if you're drinking too much or if you're binge drinking, you might experience the negative effects, like you mentioned, missing school, missing work, altering your priorities, or like getting DUIs or having accidents or violence, things like that. Right. There's a lot of strong signals that this is getting out of control.
Right, because, it's affecting your brain, it's affecting your decision-making process. That's interesting what you said, keep on talking about alcohol and your relationship to it, because I had read an NIH statistic, very interesting, about 38% of college students age 18 to 22 reported binge drinking in the past month, compared to about 32.5% of their peers at the same age, but not in college. So you had just alluded to the fact that why are you drinking? Why are you binge drinking? Are you binge drinking because you're stressed and trying to calm yourself down? Are you medicating yourself with that? So it's interesting because we often talk about on these episodes, there's a lot of stress in college. We always know that, and we've heard that, and we can experience it, but it's how you manage it. And so I would imagine if you start this way to self-medicate in college, you're setting yourself up as a young adult and going forward to getting in a bad habit to manage your stress.
Absolutely, because it's a Band-Aid. And for example, people with, like I mentioned, anxiety and depression, but also PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and ADHD. I know that some college students do have that condition. People with these mental health issues are at much higher risk for alcohol dependency or abuse. So definitely understanding why you're using it and some of your risk factors as an individual is important there.
Good information, great information. Also, sometimes I see, and I when I'm in class, I put this picture up on the screen, and it's a picture of a bartender. It's not you, Ginger, so don't worry, but a picture of a bartender mixing alcohol with an energy drink. And, I was reading up on this, and there was a study of more than 4,000 college students, and the research found that those who consumed alcohol mixed with caffeinated energy drinks were twice as likely to be injured, require medical attention, make a silly decision like to ride with an intoxicated driver, take sexually advantage of somebody, or be a victim of sexual aggressiveness. And you put caffeine, the energy drink, with the alcohol, and the alcohol is going to make you sleepy, but then the energy drink, I would imagine, would offset that and keep you awake. So you may have the propensity to drink more, which is, this is like the worst combination. And I every time I put this picture up, I look at my students and I say to them, if I ever see you doing this, you are so grounded, like no screen time for a week, because it upsets me. You don't realize how dumb this is. And so, and we have to be careful because, we talk about, rum and Coke or something else, but now these beverages, and they really got to be careful. Don't put the two together. I'm not big on the energy drinks anyway, but what a disaster ready to happen here. You were quoted in the Washington Post just recently on something that a lot of people don't really know a lot about, and it's called drunkorexia. And can you please explain to us what drunkorexia is?
Yeah, it's that article is really well done. I think she did a great job, the reporter, about covering drunkorexia in college students. And so it's actually a combination of eating disorder behavior and alcoholism behavior together. So what's happening is people are either restricting their calories or purposefully not eating or exercising a lot in order to stay thin, because there is a lot of calories in alcohol. So basically people want to drink, but they want to stay thin, so they are not eating, or they're restricting in other ways. It's a pretty dangerous practice.
So Ginger, are they like, okay, I'm going to go out to a party tonight, right? So are they not eating during the day?
Yeah. So what'll happen is, okay, I'm going to go out to a party tonight. I know I'm going to drink, 5 beers. That's, 500 calories roughly or more. So I'm not going to eat dinner, or I'm not going to eat lunch, or I'm going to go to the gym for an extra hour. So it really is disordered behavior, like eating disordered behavior, and it often is accompanying with binge drinking because you're usually not going to be working so hard to compensate for like 100-calorie glass of wine. It's going to be for higher alcohol levels. So it really is distorting the drinking relationship in a pretty negative way.
Wow, we started this off saying is, hello, don't drink on an empty stomach. So now we're talking that they're not eating all day long. You talk about empty. It's a hollow in there. They haven't eaten all day long. So then if you start drinking, and if it's binge-type behavior where you're drinking a lot quickly, and we just heard that the liver can just take so much at one time, whoa, you're going to get an impact. It's like running into a brick wall here where you're going to feel this impact, and it could really have such dangerous consequences.
It really could, and my encouragement in the article is to, if you have this kind of behavior and you identify it in yourself, college student or adult or anyone, to really reach out for help and say, I'm starting to realize this isn't safe behavior. Or if you see it happening to a friend or a family member, really to try to reach out for some help too, because it can be really bad for the body.
That's great. I mean, and that's good because sometimes, college students are good watching their friends and they don't know what to do when they see behaviors that are look like they're negative. So what are some signs that you're drinking too much or for the wrong reasons? So
Yeah, there's several. Drinking alone or in secrecy, especially the secrecy part, especially if you're becoming isolated from friends or family is a big one. Also, if you're prioritizing drinking over other responsibilities, school would be a big example, like if you missed a test or work because of drinking. If you're having mood swings or memory loss, like blackouts, or if you find yourself binge drinking or getting in the behaviors of like drunkorexia, really you should reach out to a school counselor or a therapist for help.
Right, and the student health centers always, behavioral medicine, there are on student health centers are on every campus, so they can go there. And is there any resources online, or I mean, of course you can talk to your healthcare professional, but any where people could read more about this?
Definitely. There's some really good support out there. If you are a student, my first place actually would be like the medical clinic or a counselor. They can there's usually a lot of support on campuses. Otherwise, there's a National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. There's drugabuse.com. There's Overcoming Alcohol Addiction, which is helpguide.org. There's many big national programs that really have so many support options for people.
I would imagine, Ginger, that college is a time when you're making mistakes, you're making new habits, you're learning about yourself. So this might be a really good time to see, I think I have a red flag with alcohol. And you know something? Let me take control of this now as a young adult rather than 10 years from now where I'm an older adult. So I would think it's almost like this is one of the best times to say, I'm not sure I have a good relationship, as you would say, Ginger, with alcohol. And let me just talk to somebody. And maybe it may not be as serious as you think, or it may be, but talk it out. This is a great time to talk to somebody. They're right on campus and get some guidance. And if it needs to be fixed, let's fix it now before it gets down a path that becomes more challenging.
It really is brave to bring it up. And it really is pretty normal, probably more normal than people might think. Like, I think, especially if someone's drinking in secrecy or, they're feeling like it's getting out of control, they might not realize that there's a lot of other people that also struggle. So just reaching out, being brave, speaking up, it really is part of taking care of yourself. And it's better to deal with it now, like as a young person, than to let the ill effects spill into your future job, your future family, your future relationship.
That's so great. That's such great advice. I'm gonna keep on saying your relationship with alcohol, like your relationship with food, and I think that I'm gonna keep on remembering that is your relationship, because we know that there are some studies that suggest that a little could be healthy. And we have a lot of studies that suggest a lot could be bad. And now we have even more stuff going on with this drunkorexia and binge drinking, that it can get darn near ugly. So it's an interesting beverage in that little may be okay, but when we go across that line, it could get pretty bad. So I want to thank you for coming on, because I think this is an unbelievably important topic for all of us, college students, people who post-college, adults, everybody. Here we go. Champagne Nutrition, which I'm going to love. I love your website, by the way. And I want to thank you so much for coming on Spot On.
Thank you, Joan. I hope next time we see each other, we can maybe grab a glass of red wine together.
That's just 1 glass and 5 ounces, okay? Thank you for listening to Spot On. I am your host, Dr. Joan Salge Blake. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Joan Salge Blake. Please subscribe to Spot On through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you find your podcasts. Also, visit our Facebook page to join the conversation and tell us what you'd like to hear in future episodes. And oh, by the way, could you ask 5 of your friends or family members to download Spot On and subscribe to it? Do I ask a lot from you?